I stood in the hallway of Westwood High, my hand steady as I closed my locker door. The metal click echoed softly, and I felt him approaching before I heard his footsteps. Ryan Matthews. He was walking towards me with that confident stride, his leather jacket catching the fluorescent lights, and I knew exactly what was coming. Every detail was playing out like a scene I'd memorized. The flutter of anxiety that used to consume me at moments like this was gone now, replaced by something colder and far more useful. Clarity. He stopped in front of me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, the same expensive brand his mother bought him every Christmas. His smile was warm, practiced, designed to make hearts skip. Mine didn't, not anymore. Clara, he said, his voice carrying that charm he'd perfected over years of being the most popular boy in school. I need to talk to you. Can we go somewhere quiet? I looked at him with calm eyes, taking in every detail of his face, the face I'd once loved more than my own future, more than my own ambitions, more than my own life. The face that had smiled at me on our wedding day before the slow, methodical destruction began. I'm actually heading to the library, I said evenly. I have a college application essay to revise. His smile faltered for just a second. In my previous life, I would have dropped everything. I would have followed him anywhere, eager and desperate for his attention. That girl was dead now, even if no one else knew it yet. I didn't wait for his response. I turned and walked away, my footsteps measured and purposeful, leaving him standing there with words still forming on his lips. It was such a small act, really, just walking away. But it was the first brick I removed from the prison I'd built around myself in that other lifetime. The memories of my past life lived in my mind like a second consciousness, a ghost that haunted every decision. I was 42 years old the night I died, or at least my soul was. I just discovered the final piece of evidence, the proof that my sister Diana and my husband Ryan had been having an affair for over a decade, since before our wedding. The proof that the children I'd raised weren't entirely mine, that my career sacrifices had been manipulated, that every major decision in my life had been orchestrated to benefit everyone except me. I'd been sitting in my car outside their vacation house, the one I'd helped buy with my inheritance money, watching through the window as they laughed together. So easy and familiar. My sister wore the diamond necklace Ryan had told me was too expensive when I'd admired it on our anniversary. She wore it like it had always belonged to her, like everything that was mine had always belonged to her. The rain had been falling hard that night, sheets of water blurring the windshield. I'd started driving without really seeing, my mind fractured between rage and a grief so profound it felt like drowning. The truck came out of nowhere, or maybe I'd driven into its path. I never knew for certain. What I did know was that I woke up in my 17-year-old body the morning of the first day of senior year, with every memory of the next 25 years intact. I remembered how it started, Ryan asking me to prom in front of the whole school. I remembered feeling chosen, special, like I'd won some lottery I hadn't even known I'd entered. I remembered my sister Diana's face, the flash of something dark behind her congratulatory smile. At the time, I'd thought I was imagining it. I wasn't. I remembered the subtle ways she began inserting herself into our relationship, the concerned conversations where she'd point out Ryan's flaws, making herself seem like the wise older sister, while simultaneously making herself indispensable to him, the way she'd show up at his family events, charming his parents, becoming the daughter they'd never had. I remembered thinking she was being supportive, that she was helping us build our life together. I was so naive. Diana had always been the golden child, beautiful, charming, effortlessly talented at everything. I was 3 years younger, quieter, more bookish, forever existing in her shadow. Our parents adored her. When she expressed interest in fashion design, they funded her entire portfolio and studio space. When I wanted to study engineering, they told me it wasn't feminine enough, that I should consider something more suitable. But I'd won Ryan, or so I'd thought. For once, I'd had something Diana didn't have. The irony was that I'd given up MIT for him. I'd gotten in, full scholarship, everything I dreamed of. But Ryan was going to state college on a football scholarship, and he'd looked at me with those earnest eyes and said, "I can't imagine being that far away from you. Long distance never works. Don't you want us to have a real future together?" Diana had reinforced it. MIT will always be there, Clara, but true love, you only find that once. Don't be stupid enough to throw it away for a degree. So I'd stayed. I'd gone to state college, switching my major to business management because it had better networking opportunities with Ryan's sports marketing focus. I'd spent my college years planning our future instead of building my own. I'd taken the job at my father's company instead of pursuing the engineering firm offer because it was stable and close to home and would let me be there for our future family. Every decision, carefully guided by Diana's advice and Ryan's needs, had led me further from myself. We married the summer after college. Diana was my maid of honor. She'd helped me plan everything, choose everything, decide everything. She'd been so involved that my mother joked she should have been the bride. We'd all laughed. I wanted to scream now, thinking about it. The marriage had been good for the first few years. Or at least I'd convinced myself it was good. Ryan's sports marketing career took off. I managed my father's company, grew it, made it profitable. We bought a house, we talked about children. Everything seemed perfect in that scripted magazine spread way. Then my father died, and I inherited everything. The company, the properties, the investments. Suddenly, I was wealthy in my own right. Diana had inherited nothing. Our father had cut her out of the will after she'd borrowed and never returned hundreds of thousands over the years spent on her failing fashion ventures. That's when things changed. Or maybe that's when I finally started noticing. Ryan became more critical. My work hours were too long. I was too focused on the company. I wasn't paying enough attention to him. Diana started coming by more often, offering to help with things, being the supportive sister. She'd have dinner waiting when I came home late from the office. She'd pick up Ryan's dry cleaning. She'd plan surprises for his birthday that I was too busy to think of. I'd been grateful. God, I'd been so grateful for her help. When I'd finally gotten pregnant, after years of trying, Diana had been the first person I'd told. She'd cried with joy. She'd been there for every appointment I couldn't bring Ryan to because of his work schedule. She'd held my hand through the difficult delivery. She'd also spent every night at the hospital with Ryan while I was recovering. Looking back, I could see all the signs I'd missed. The way they finished each other's sentences, the inside jokes I wasn't part of, the way Ryan's eyes would light up when Diana entered a room, in a way they never did for me anymore. The way he'd suggest Diana join us on vacations, on date nights, on every significant moment of our marriage. I'd thought I was building a family. They'd been building something else entirely. The company, the one I'd spent 15 years growing, had somehow ended up with Diana's name on half the paperwork. Ryan had convinced me it was smart tax planning, that family businesses should be shared, that I was being paranoid when I questioned the arrangements. My mother had sided with them. "Why are you being so selfish? Diana's your sister. Family takes care of family." By the time I'd found the real evidence, the secret bank accounts, the property they'd bought together, the messages going back 15 years, it was too late. Or it would have been too late if I hadn't died and been given this impossible second chance. I woke up in my old bedroom at 17 with tears streaming down my face. Not from grief, but from fury, so pure it was almost holy. The purple walls I'd painted sophomore year, the desk covered in college brochures, the acceptance letter from MIT tucked into my mirror frame like a trophy. I'd grabbed that letter with shaking hands, staring at it like a message from a future I'd once thrown away. The date at the top read April of last year. I had until May 1st to accept. In my previous life, I declined 3 days from now. This time, that letter was going to be my salvation. I'd stood in front of my mirror for a long time that first morning, studying my 17-year-old face, the skin still smooth, uncreased by the stress that would come, the eyes still bright with possibility. This body, this moment, this second chance, I wasn't going to waste it on the same mistakes. That was 4 months ago. Since then, I'd been playing a long game that required patience I'd learned in the hardest way possible. Senior year he had started, and with it came the social patterns I remembered too well. Ryan was the star quarterback, the boy every girl wanted, the golden child headed for a sports scholarship and an easy future. Diana was finishing her junior year at State College, home most weekends, still positioned perfectly to play her role in destroying my life. But this time, I knew the script. This time, I could rewrite it. At lunch, I sat with the academic decathlon team instead of at Ryan's table like I used to. Jenna Park was explaining a physics problem, and I found myself actually engaged, excited even. These were my people, the ones I'd abandoned in my first life because Diana had convinced me that being too smart would make me seem unfeminine, that boys like Ryan preferred girls who didn't threaten their intelligence. Clara, you're coming to the university's engineering expo next weekend, right? Jenna asked, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. They have recruiters from 6 different firms. Definitely, I said. In my previous life, I'd skipped it because Ryan had a game. This time, the game could happen without me. I felt eyes on me and looked up to see Ryan watching from his table across the cafeteria. He was surrounded by his teammates and the cheerleaders who orbited them like satellites, but his attention was fixed on me. There was confusion in his expression, and something else, maybe the first hint of realization that I wasn't following the script he'd expected. Beside him, my best friend from the past timeline, Melissa Wright, was laughing at something one of the other players said. In my previous life, Melissa and I had grown apart after Ryan and I started dating. Diana had encouraged it, suggesting that Melissa was jealous, that she was toxic. But I remembered now. Melissa had been the only one who'd questioned my choices, who'd asked if I was sure about giving up MIT, who'd noticed when I started changing myself to fit what Ryan wanted. I'd cut her out for being honest. I wouldn't make that mistake again. After lunch, I found Melissa at her locker. She looked up, surprised. We hadn't talked much since I'd started keeping my distance from Ryan. In this timeline, we'd been growing apart for the last few months of junior year. Hey, I said softly, I wanted to apologize. I have been a terrible friend. Her expression cycled through several emotions before settling on cautious hope. Clara, what's going on with you? You've been different since school started. I'm just figuring some things out, I said, and I realized I've been ignoring the people who actually matter. I missed you. Her smile was uncertain but real. I missed you too. Want to study together tonight? I'm drowning in AP Calc. I'd love that. It was such a small repair, but it mattered. In my previous life, I'd isolated myself from everyone except Ryan and Diana. This time, I was going to build a foundation they couldn't reach. Ryan tried again after school, catching me as I walked to my car. This time, he didn't just ask to talk. He had the confession prepared. I could see it in the way he held himself, in the flowers he'd hidden behind his back, in the way his friends watched from a distance with knowing smiles. Clara, wait, he called out. I stopped, but didn't turn around immediately. When I did, my expression was polite but distant. I know you've been busy, he started, pulling out the flowers. White roses, my supposed favourite. In truth, I'd always preferred wildflowers, but Diana liked roses, and somehow her preferences had become mine in people's minds. But I can't wait any longer to tell you how I feel. This was it. The moment that had changed everything in my first life. He'd asked me to prom right here in the parking lot, with half the school watching. I'd been so overwhelmed, so flattered, so convinced I was living a fairy tale. "Ryan," I interrupted before he could fully launch into his prepared speech. "I'm flattered, I really am, but I'm not interested in dating right now. I'm focused on my future, on college, on my own goals." His face went through a series of reactions: confusion, disbelief, a flash of something darker that he quickly covered. "But we're perfect together. Everyone thinks so. I thought you—" "I know what everyone thinks," I said, my voice calm and even. "But what I think is that I'm 17. I have my whole life ahead of me, and I'm not going to plan it around someone else's expectations." I could feel the eyes on us, the whispers starting. This was social suicide in high school terms. Ryan Matthews didn't get rejected. Girls didn't turn him down. "Is this because of something someone said? Did someone tell you not to date me?" His eyes narrowed slightly. He was already looking for the explanation that would make sense, that would preserve his ego. "This is because of something I decided," I said firmly. "I'm sorry if that's not what you wanted to hear." I got in my car and drove away, leaving him standing there with wilting roses and a bruised ego. In my rearview mirror, I could see him standing frozen, surrounded by his confused friends. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, but not from fear or regret, from relief, from power, from the intoxicating realization that I'd just rewritten the opening chapter of a story that had destroyed me. Diana called that night. I let it go to voicemail. She called again, and again. Finally, I answered. "Clara, what is going on?" Her voice had that edge of controlled concern she'd perfected. "Ryan called me upset. He said you rejected him in front of everyone. What were you thinking?" "I was thinking that I don't want to date him," I said simply. "But he's perfect for you. He's going to be..." "Going to be what, Diana? A football star? A sports marketing executive? What does any of that have to do with what I want?" There was silence on the line. I could almost hear her recalculating, trying to figure out which approach would work. "I'm just worried about you, little sister. You've been acting strange lately. Mum's noticed too. Is everything okay? Are you feeling depressed or something?" The manipulation was so transparent now. In my previous life, these concerned questions had made me doubt myself, made me wonder if something was wrong with me for wanting more. Now I could see them for what they were, attempts to gaslight me back into compliance. "I'm better than I've ever been," I told her. "I'm just finally focusing on what matters to me." "And what's that?" Her voice was sharp now, the sisterly concern slipping. "MIT, engineering, my own future, not the life everyone else thinks I should want." "MIT?" She laughed, but it sounded forced. "Clara, you're not seriously still thinking about that, are you? We talked about this. It's too far away. You won't know anyone. And you know Mum and Dad think it's too intense for you." "Actually, I've already started working on my acceptance. I'm going..." The silence that followed was long and heavy. "We'll see about that," Diana finally said and hung up. I sat there, holding my phone, staring at my reflection in the darkened screen. That had been a declaration of war, though Diana probably didn't fully realize it yet. She'd spent years assuming I was malleable, controllable, easy to manipulate. She was about to learn differently. Over the next several weeks, I moved with deliberate purpose. Every action was calculated, every choice strategic. I wasn't just refusing to fall into the same traps, I was building something new. I spent my time in the engineering lab, working on projects that caught the attention of my teachers. I joined the robotics club. I volunteered at the local community college, helping them update their computer systems. I reached out to the MIT admissions office, expressing my confirmed interest and asking about scholarship opportunities beyond my existing offer. At home, I started documenting everything. I made copies of all my important documents: birth certificate, social security card, bank accounts. I opened a new account at a different bank, one Diana didn't use, and started directing my earnings from my part-time job there. I studied trust law, inheritance law, business law. I was 17, but I remembered being 42, and I knew what was coming. My parents noticed the change, of course. My father approached me one evening in his study. "Your sister is worried about you," he said, not looking up from his paperwork. "She says you're making rash decisions." "Like wanting to go to MIT?" I asked evenly. "Like throwing away a good relationship with a fine young man? Like distancing yourself from your family? Diana says you've been cold to her." "Have you asked me how I feel?" I countered. "Or what I want?" He finally looked up, surprised. In my previous life, I'd never questioned him directly. I'd been the obedient daughter, the one who went along to get along. "I want to study engineering, Dad. I got into MIT with a full scholarship. That's a massive opportunity. Why wouldn't you want that for me?" "Because engineering isn't a suitable career for a woman," he said bluntly. "You'll just end up married with children, and all that expensive education will be wasted. Better to study something practical that you can use from home." "And if I don't want to get married young? If I want to build a career first?" "Then you're being selfish and short-sighted." He returned to his papers, dismissing me. "Diana knows what she's talking about. She's older, wiser. You should listen to her." I left his study feeling the old anger, but also a grim satisfaction. I was documenting all of this in my journal. Every conversation, every dismissal, every time they chose Diana's wants over my needs. In my previous life, these patterns had been invisible to me, normalized. Now they were evidence. Ryan didn't give up. He tried different approaches: the romantic gesture, the wounded friend, the concerned suitor. He'd show up at my locker with coffee. He'd try to partner with me in classes. He'd text me asking if we could just talk. I remained polite, but distant. Every refusal seemed to confuse him more. I realized he'd never really known me in that other life. He'd known the version of me that molded herself to his expectations. This version, the one who had her own goals and boundaries, was foreign to him. "Why don't you like me?" he finally asked one day, cornering me after school. There was genuine frustration in his voice. "I don't dislike you, Ryan. I just don't want to date you." "But why? We'd be good together. Everyone thinks so." "Maybe that's the problem," I said. "You're worried about what everyone thinks instead of actually knowing me." "I do know you." "Really? What do I want to study in college?" He hesitated. "Business, like your dad's company?" "Engineering. I've wanted to study engineering since I was 12. "Oh." He looked genuinely surprised. "I didn't know that." "Exactly." I adjusted my backpack. "You know the version of me you expected. You don't know the actual me." I walked away, leaving him to process that. In my previous life, I'd convinced myself that love meant changing to fit someone else's vision. Now I understood that real love, the kind worth having, meant being valued for who you actually were. Diana escalated. She started coming home every weekend, inserting herself into family dinners, having private conversations with our parents. She'd corner me with sisterly chats that were really interrogations. "Mum's really hurt that you're being so distant," she said one Saturday afternoon, perched on my bed like we were having a casual sisterly moment. "She feels like you're shutting everyone out." "I'm not shutting anyone out. I'm just busy with school and applications." "Applications? I thought you were just going to state with..." She caught herself. "With who?" I asked innocently. "Ryan? Why would you assume I was going wherever Ryan goes?" "I just meant, it's a good school, close to home, practical. MIT is where I'm going, Diana." Her expression hardened for just a moment before she smoothed it over with concern. "Clara, I need to be honest with you. As your sister, I have to tell you, I think you're making a mistake. MIT is so far away, so intense. You'll be miserable. And you're throwing away a great relationship for what? Pride? It's not pride. It's my future. Your future should include people who love you. Ryan really cares about you. I've talked to him and he's devastated. You've talked to him? Something cold settled in my stomach. Why would you be talking to Ryan about me? Because I care about both of you. He called me asking for advice about how to win you back. He's such a sweet guy, Clara. Don't you see what you're giving up? This was it, the beginning of their alliance in this timeline too. But this time, I was watching it form instead of being blindsided by it years later. Diana, I said carefully, I need you to respect my choices. If Ryan wants to talk to me, he can talk to me directly. I don't need intermediaries. I'm not an intermediary. I'm your sister, trying to help you not ruin your life. No, I said quietly, you're trying to manipulate my life to fit what you think it should be, and I'm done with that. She stood up, her face flushed. You've changed, Clara. You're not the sweet sister I know. You've become cold and selfish. Maybe I've just become honest, I replied. Maybe I've finally stopped pretending to be who everyone wants me to be. She left my room angry, and I knew I'd just made an enemy of someone I'd need to watch carefully. But I also knew something else. In my previous life, I'd been too trusting, too eager to believe the best in people. This time, I was clear-eyed. The months passed, and I built my fortress one brick at a time. I maintained my grades perfect, as always. I completed my MIT paperwork and confirmed my attendance for the fall. I won a national engineering competition with a sustainable energy project. I secured additional scholarships that would cover not just tuition, but living expenses, ensuring I'd be completely financially independent. At school, my reputation shifted. I wasn't Ryan Matthews' potential girlfriend anymore. I was Clara Foster, the girl who was going to MIT, the academic powerhouse, the one who turned down the most popular boy in school to focus on her dreams. Some people admired it. Some people thought I was crazy. I didn't care about either opinion. Ryan eventually moved on to Ashley Cooper, one of the cheerleaders who'd been waiting in the wings. I watched them at prom, which I attended with a group of friends from the robotics club. They looked perfect together, all smiles and matching outfits and easy chemistry. Exactly what I'd once thought I wanted. I felt nothing watching them, or rather, I felt relief. Diana's fashion program was struggling. I learned through overheard conversations that she'd maxed out multiple credit cards on her latest collection, that her student loans were mounting, that she'd been asking our parents for money again. In my previous life, this would have led to her eventually borrowing from Ryan and me, using my inheritance to fund her failing ventures. This time, she couldn't access what she'd never helped me build. Graduation came, I was valedictorian, though I declined to give the speech. I had no desire to stand in front of everyone and pretend I was nostalgic for a high school experience. I was desperate to leave behind. At the ceremony, I sat between Melissa and Jenna, my real friends, the ones who'd supported my actual dreams. My parents were in the audience, their pride visible but complicated. They'd wanted me to stay close, to follow the path Diana had endorsed. But even they couldn't deny the prestige of MIT, the scholarships, the opportunities. Diana sat with them, her smile tight. Ryan sat several rows away with his family, Ashley beside him. He caught my eye once during the ceremony, and I saw something there. Regret, maybe, or just confusion about the alternate timeline he'd never know existed. After graduation, there was a party at Ryan's house. I didn't go. Instead, I went to dinner with Melissa and Jenna and a few others from my study groups, the people who'd been there for midnight problem sets and competition prep and actual conversations about things that mattered. I can't believe you're really doing it, Melissa said over dessert. Moving across the country, studying engineering at MIT. You're living the dream, Clara. It feels surreal, I admitted. Like I'm finally becoming who I was always supposed to be. The summer before MIT was a careful negotiation. I worked full-time at an engineering firm, interning and building my resume. I saved every dollar. I packed deliberately, taking only what mattered, leaving behind the artifacts of a life I'd moved beyond. Diana made one last attempt to sabotage me. She told our parents that MIT was too dangerous for a young woman, that I'd be alone in a big city, that I was being reckless. She suggested I defer a year, stay close to home, reconsider. Our parents called a family meeting. We sat in the living room, and I felt like I was on trial. Your sister makes some good points, my father began. No, I said simply, she doesn't. My mother blinked. Excuse me? Diana doesn't get a vote in my future. Neither do you, actually. I'm 18. I have my own scholarships, my own funding, my own plans. I'm going to MIT because it's my dream and my choice. Don't be disrespectful, my father warned. I'm not being disrespectful. I'm being clear. For my entire life, you've prioritized Diana's wants over my needs. You've told me what to study, what to care about, who to date. You've made decisions about my life without asking what I want. That ends now. Clara, my mother looked shocked. Your sister is trying to protect you. I looked at Diana then, really looked at her. She was sitting forward, her expression triumphant, thinking she was winning. She didn't realize I knew her playbook by heart. Diana isn't trying to protect me, I said calmly. She's trying to control me. She always has. And I'm done allowing it. You're being paranoid, Diana said, but her voice had an edge. I'm your sister. I love you. I just want what's best for you. No, I said. You want what's easiest for you. You've always needed me small so you could feel big. You've needed me to fail so you could be the success. Well, I'm not playing anymore. The room fell silent. My father's face was red. My mother looked between us, confused. Diana's mask had slipped, showing the anger underneath. You'll regret this, Diana said quietly. When you're alone at that school, struggling, with no one to help you, you'll regret pushing us all away. Maybe, I said, but at least I'll regret my own choices instead of regretting yours. I left for MIT in August. My parents drove me to the airport, the silence in the car heavy with unspoken disappointments. Diana didn't come. She'd sent a brief text wishing me luck, nothing more. At the airport, my mother hugged me tightly. Please call, she whispered. No matter what was said, you're still our daughter. I will, I promised, and I meant it. Despite everything, I didn't hate them. I just understood them now, saw their flaws and limitations. I'd learned that loving people didn't mean letting them control you. My father shook my hand formally. Do well, he said. Make us proud. I'll make myself proud, I replied. That's what matters. The flight to Boston felt like travelling between worlds. I stared out the window as the landscape changed below, thinking about the girl who died at 42 with nothing but regrets, and the girl who was reborn at 17 with everything ahead of her. MIT was everything I dreamed and nothing I'd expected. The work was intense, brutal even. I was surrounded by people as brilliant and driven as I was. I struggled sometimes, doubted myself, felt overwhelmed. But I also felt alive in a way I'd never experienced in that other life. I made friends, real friends who challenged me intellectually, who supported my ambitions, who saw me as a whole person. I joined labs and research groups. I worked on projects that excited me. I dated occasionally, casually, never letting anyone take priority over my goals. I called home every week, maintaining the connection but setting boundaries. Diana and I barely spoke. She dropped out of her fashion program, I learned, and was working retail while trying to start an online boutique. My parents had given her seed money. I didn't say anything. It wasn't my battle anymore. Ryan sent me a friend request on social media, sophomore year. I accepted out of curiosity. His life looked exactly as I'd remembered it would. State college, football team, partying, eventually graduating with a business degree. He was still with Ashley. They looked happy in that surface-level way. He messaged me once. "Hey, just wanted to say, I see you're doing amazing things at MIT. I'm proud of you. I get it now, why you said no. You were right." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. He was part of a timeline I'd left behind. By my junior year, I'd been published in 2 academic journals. I had internship offers from 3 major tech companies. I'd found my place in the world, carved out a future built on my own terms. One evening, studying in the library, I got a call from my mother. Her voice was shaking. "Clara, I need to tell you something. Your father had a heart attack." Everything stopped. Despite our complicated relationship, despite everything, he was still my father. "Is he okay?" "He's stable. He's going to recover, but Clara," her voice broke, "he's been asking for you, and I've been thinking about what you said before you left, about how we prioritized Diana. I think maybe you were right." I flew home that weekend. My father was in the hospital, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. When I entered his room, his eyes filled with tears. "Clara," he whispered, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "For what?" I asked gently, sitting beside his bed. "For not seeing you, for not listening. Your mother showed me your publications, your achievements. You were right to go. You were right about everything." I held his hand, feeling the complicated tangle of emotions. Anger for the past, compassion for the present, hope for the future. "I forgive you," I said, and I meant it. Not because what he'd done was okay, but because I'd learned that forgiveness was something I did for myself, not for others. Diana came to the hospital that evening. We ended up alone in the cafeteria, an accidental confrontation over stale coffee. "I suppose you're happy now," she said, "being the successful daughter, making me look like a failure." "I'm not competing with you, Diana. I never was. You took everything. The scholarship, the opportunities, the attention. You left me with nothing." "I took nothing that wasn't mine. You had every opportunity I had. You just made different choices." Her face twisted with anger. "You were supposed to be the ordinary one. I was supposed to be the special one. You weren't supposed to outshine me." And there it was. The truth I'd always known, but she'd never admitted. She hadn't wanted to help me or protect me. She'd wanted to diminish me so she could shine brighter. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I said quietly. "But I'm not going to make myself smaller to make you feel bigger. Not anymore." She left without another word. I didn't follow her. Some bridges needed to burn. I graduated from MIT with honours and multiple job offers. I chose a position at an innovative robotics company in California, as far from my past as I could get while still being on the same coast. My parents came to graduation. Diana didn't. She'd sent a card with a generic congratulations. I didn't read beyond that. "We're so proud of you," my mother said, tears streaming. "So incredibly proud." My father, still recovering but stronger, hugged me tight. "You were right," he said, "about everything. I am sorry it took me so long to see it." Standing there in my cap and gown, surrounded by my fellow graduates, I thought about that other Clara, the one who died at 42, with nothing but regrets. The one who'd given up MIT for a boy who didn't really know her. The one who'd sacrificed her dreams for people who'd never valued them. That Clara was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, clearer, uncompromisingly herself. 5 years later, I was a senior engineer at my company, leading a team developing accessible robotics technology. I'd published extensively, spoken at conferences, built a life that was entirely mine. I was at a tech conference in Seattle when I saw him. Ryan was there with some marketing firm working the floor. He'd gained weight, looked tired, older than our years. Ashley wasn't with him. I'd seen on social media they'd divorced a year ago. He recognised me across the room. I saw the moment of recognition, the way his expression changed from polite interest to shocked awareness. He approached me during a break. "Clara? Clara Foster." "That's me," I said pleasantly. "Wow, I heard you were doing well, but you're keynoting tomorrow, aren't you? On adaptive robotic systems?" "I am," I confirmed. He shook his head slowly, a rueful smile on his face. "I think about that day sometimes, in the parking lot, when you turned me down. I thought you were crazy. And now? Now, I think you were the only one who knew what you were doing." He laughed, but it sounded hollow. "I'm divorced. Job's fine, but nothing special. Living in my hometown still, working for my dad's friend's company. I keep thinking about how different things could have been." "Different how?" I asked, genuinely curious. "If I'd actually listened to you back then, if I'd asked what you wanted instead of assuming, if I'd..." He trailed off. "Ashley and I, we were never really compatible. We just looked good together, you know? But there was nothing underneath. I felt a flicker of something. Not satisfaction exactly, but a quiet acknowledgement that the universe had a way of balancing itself." "I'm sorry your marriage didn't work out," I said, and meant it. I'd stopped being angry at Ryan years ago. He'd been a prop in Diana's manipulation, as much a victim of his own superficiality as anything else. Is there someone in your life?" he asked, almost hopefully. "There have been people," I said, "good people. But I've learned I don't need to arrange my life around someone else to be happy. If the right person comes along, someone who values what I value, who sees me clearly, then maybe. But I'm not waiting for it. I'm not building my life around the possibility." He nodded slowly. "You really figured it out, didn't you? How to be happy?" "I figured out how to be myself," I corrected. "Happiness came from that." We talked for a few more minutes. Surface conversation about mutual acquaintances, the conference, industry trends. Then he excused himself and I watched him disappear into the crowd. I felt nothing but a mild nostalgia, like looking at an old photograph of a place you used to live but no longer remember clearly. That evening, I called Melissa. She was a doctor now in Chicago, married to another physician, expecting her first child. We'd stayed close despite the distance, the kind of friendship that survived because it was built on something real. "You'll never guess who I ran into," I said. "Ryan Matthews." "How did you know?" "Because karma is real, and you're at a major tech conference keynoting while he's probably working a booth somewhere." She laughed. "How did it feel?" "Honestly, nothing. He's just a person I used to know, the version of him I was so afraid of, the one I thought held all the power. He never really existed." "That's growth, babe. That's what winning looks like." After we hung up, I stood at my hotel window, looking out at the Seattle skyline. I thought about that girl in the parking lot, the one who'd walked away from Ryan with shaking hands. How terrified she'd been. How certain that she was making the right choice, even if she couldn't fully see where it would lead. I thought about Diana, who I rarely heard from anymore. Last I knew from my mother, she was working for a marketing agency, still living at home, still trying to launch various business ventures that never quite took off. My mother had stopped asking me to reach out to her, had finally accepted that some relationships couldn't be salvaged, and maybe didn't need to be. "She asks about you sometimes," my mother had told me during our last call. "She sees your articles, your talks. I think I don't know, regretful maybe, or just bitter. It's hard to tell with Diana." I'd felt a pang of something then. Not guilt. I'd stopped carrying guilt for other people's choices. But maybe a sadness for what could have been if Diana had seen me as an ally instead of a competitor, if she'd celebrated my success instead of resenting it. But You couldn't save people who didn't want to be saved. You couldn't force people to be happy for you. You could only control your own path, your own choices, your own peace. The keynote went well. I spoke about accessible robotics, about designing technology that served everyone, not just the privileged few. I talked about second chances, how sometimes the most important innovations came from rethinking our initial assumptions, from being willing to start over and build something better. The audience didn't know I was talking about my own life as much as my work. Afterward, there was a reception. I was talking to a professor from Carnegie Mellon about a potential collaboration when someone tapped my shoulder. I turned to find a woman about my age, professional but warm-looking, with intelligent eyes and an easy smile. "Dr. Foster, I'm Nicole Chen, different Chen, no relation to anyone from your past," she added with a knowing look that told me she'd done her research. "I run an educational nonprofit focused on getting young women into STEM. I was hoping to talk to you about being a mentor in our program." We talked for 20 minutes, and by the end, I'd agreed to participate. As we exchanged contact information, she said something that stuck with me. "You know what I love about your story? You didn't wait for permission to become who you were meant to be. You just did it. That's what these girls need to see. That they don't need anyone's approval to chase their dreams." After she left, I found a quiet corner and pulled out my phone. I hadn't looked at Diana's social media in years, but something made me check now. Her profile was sparse, a few posts about her job, some inspirational quotes about perseverance, a photo of her at our parents' house. She looked tired, older than her years. There was a brittleness to her smile in the photos that reminded me of how I'd looked in that other life, the one where I'd slowly disappeared into someone else's expectations. I felt compassion then, not the kind that made me want to reach out or fix things. We were long past that. But the kind that acknowledged we'd both been trapped by the same family dynamics, the same expectations. The difference was I'd fought my way out. Diana had chosen to stay, to keep trying to win a game where the rules were designed to keep her dependent and small. I closed the app and opened my calendar instead. Tomorrow I'd fly back to California. Next week I had 3 meetings about the new project. Next month I was speaking at another conference. Next year, who knew? The possibilities felt endless. When I returned home, there was a letter waiting from MIT. They were inviting me to join their advisory board for the engineering department to help shape the future of the program that had shaped me. I called my father to tell him. We'd rebuilt our relationship slowly, carefully. He'd never be the father I'd wished for as a child, but he'd become someone I could respect, someone who'd acknowledged his mistakes and tried to do better. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," he said, his voice warm with genuine pride. "Your mother and I would love to fly out when you give your first board presentation, if that's okay with you." "I'd like that," I said. "Clara," he said, his voice becoming serious. "I know I've said this before, but I need to say it again. I was wrong about everything, about trying to make you smaller, about listening to Diana instead of you, about prioritizing what looked good over what was right. You saved yourself despite us, not because of us. And I'm sorry for that, but I'm also grateful that you did." "I'm grateful too," I said softly. After we hung up, I sat on my balcony, watching the sunset paint the California sky in shades of orange and purple. I thought about that impossible night, that moment of death and rebirth. I'd never know if it had been real, a genuine second chance, or if it had been a dying dream, a final wish of a woman who'd lived with too many regrets. But it didn't matter. What mattered was that somewhere, somehow, I'd learned the most important lesson, that the only person who could save you was yourself. That waiting for permission or approval or the perfect circumstances was just another form of surrender. That the bravest thing you could do was claim your own life, even when everyone around you said you were wrong. I hadn't destroyed Diana. I hadn't gotten revenge on Ryan. I hadn't punished my parents for their failures. I'd simply outgrown them all. I'd built a life so full and rich and authentically mine that their opinions became irrelevant, their manipulations powerless, their limitations invisible in the rearview mirror. My victory wasn't that they'd failed. It was that their failure or success no longer had anything to do with me. I was free, completely, utterly, undeniably free. And as I sat there watching the sun disappear below the horizon, I realized something else. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for the next achievement, not for the next milestone, not for anyone's validation. I was already exactly where I was meant to be, living a life I'd built with my own hands, on my own terms, for my own reasons. The girl who'd died with regrets was finally at peace, and the woman who'd been reborn had finally come home to herself. That was the real rebirth, not the impossible second chance, but the daily choice to live deliberately, authentically, courageously, to be myself so completely that no one else's version of who I should be could even reach me anymore. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need vindication. I didn't need anyone to acknowledge what they'd done or failed to do. I just needed to keep being exactly who I was. And that, in the end, was more than enough.